Welcome back. It's exactly 9:33 a.m. And of course, we're now going to be talking with Gideon Chitanga. He is a research associate at the African Center for the Study of the United States. He is at Wits University. And I do thank you indeed, Gideon. I do know you were on your way out, but you very graciously decided to stay back to do this interview with us here at Salam Media. Thank you indeed. Much appreciated. Let's just dig deep. Let's just dive into the interview and let's look at the issue that we're going to be unpacking. We understand that China is willing to do, and I quote, whatever is conducive to promote dialogue, secure a ceasefire, and restore peace amidst the deepening conflict in Gaza. China's state media has reported that this was during the country's special envoy's visit to the Middle East. What do you make of that statement, Gideon?
Well, I think this is a very important statement coming from one of the major economies in the world. And obviously, it reasons with China's Global Security Initiative announced last year in 2022 by President Xi Jinping and later elaborated by the Minister of Foreign Affairs. The emphasis on dialogue and mediation in ending conflicts globally, wherever conflicts are, the emphasis on consultations and talking to different parties who are involved in the conflict as a way of seeking permanent solutions and providing for peaceful solutions to serious conflicts. From your statement, it's very clear that the situation in the Gaza Strip is very grave. It's serious. The casualties are shocking. Everyone, I think, who watches gets so shocked by the death of children and infants. The broader implications of the conflict in terms of just lack of the basic human needs in that conflict, but also the historic nature of the conflict and its immediate implosion calls for serious diplomats and serious diplomacy at a very critical time. And I think that it is clear that Western countries are fumbling around one side aligning with Israel, and on the other side, they don't have an answer to the casualties that are emerging from the Israel bombardment of the Gaza Strip. So the resounding call for a ceasefire, the resounding call for humanitarian intervention, the need to find a permanent political solution to the conflict through dialogue and mediation is probably the answer that is needed, and that China is openly calling for such a process is very key. I think that the Chinese engagement, which also converges with what African countries are saying and countries from the global south are saying, will probably be something that the Western parties can reflect on and urgently call on Israel to shift its approach to a peaceful political solution instead of continued use of military force, which actually might eventually destabilize the whole region. China was involved in mediating the softening of relations and the re-engagement between Saudi Arabia and Iran. And within the broader framework of its strategy, peaceful strategy in the Middle East, there were considerations to also look at the conflict between Israel and Gaza, or between Israel and the Palestine, and to reboot efforts to find permanent solutions to that conflict. So I think this process, coming out of the 2 weeks, the attacks on Israel by Gaza in the past 2 weeks, might actually, if used, seized as a key opportunity to consolidate or to reboot diplomacy. It might get global powers to really reactivate, engage seriously, and use this moment to find a serious solution that will avoid conflict on a longer term.
Do you think that that would be possible, given that Biden and Rishi Sunak from the UK have actually assisted and aligned themselves with Israel by showing outward support, and they've made personal visits to Netanyahu. And of course, the UK have sent in arms and ammunitions, and so has Biden. In fact, he's got his 2 aircraft carriers outside of the Gaza waters, so to speak. Those are outright um, acts of support, aggressive support against the Palestinians, is it not? And it gives a very, very strong message to the Western world and the rest of the world for that matter.
You are right, and I think that for Joe Biden, this is a bit of a conundrum. The relations between the Biden administration and Netanyahu's administration have not exactly been as rosy as they appeared since the last 2 weeks, or as strong as they appeared since the last 2 weeks. You recall that Netanyahu was re-engineering the Israel political system with a view, I think, to consolidate power, to allow his right-wing regime to consolidate power. There were protests in Israel, and several occasions the Biden administration sent messages, including signals, to say they believed that the Netanyahu government was taking Israel in the wrong direction in terms of Israel being a democracy. So part of this paradox of demonstrating strong support for Israel, and I think is strongly denominated by some serious behind-the-scenes diplomacy to try and exercise leverage, which can push Israel towards a different course. Unfortunately, as it stands, there is also serious political pressure within Israel itself for the Netanyahu administration to be seen to be resolutely doing something. And secondly, I think the calculus that this right-wing regime holds is that their political redemption resides in them embarking on a successful war against Hamas. Whatever a successful war means, it's something else, because I personally do not see, or many political analysts share the view that they do not see any military victory beyond a political solution. But yes, the West is fumbling. If you just think about the events as they unfolded from the day of the attack in Israel, you will understand the shift both in rhetoric and in approaches from where Western powers and Western leaders were saying Hamas is a terrorist organization, it executed kids and so on and so on. And as more insubstantial information and evidence filtered in, these positions are changing. The world is actually rising against the war. There are just so many protests across the world, and people are calling for peace. There is a high risk that already the Western powers, the US, the UK, France, you call them Germany, when they face the global south, they have really a serious, deep crisis of credibility, because these countries believe that the West's posture is characterized by double standards and to an extent arrogance. They feel that the West would always support its interests, overlooking any other group, any other society, any other country's interests. And I think at this critical juncture, Western governments have to navigate carefully, hardening the posture that others, countries from the global south, hold against them, and navigating the dynamics of getting Israel to shift from this right-wing driven agenda that is totally militarist to the point of excluding serious dialogue to permanently resolve the issues that are faced between Israel and Palestine. And I think this is what China is seeking, with calls for dialogue, serious agent process of engagement with all parties involved in the conflict. The direct two parties, countries in the Middle East, and the Western powers because they have interest in this part of the region.
Gideon, this is nothing short of a genocide and ethnic cleansing. Very sad to say. My personal views, of course. But that being said, we do also know that Beijing has maintained good relations with Israel, but has also supported the Palestinian cause for decades. So they go on to say that force is not a way to resolve the problem, and that responding to violence with violence will only lead to a vicious circle of revenge. But of course, it's a very unbalanced situation that we're seeing at the moment. I mean, the brute force that is being shown by the occupiers against the Palestinian people is definitely unprecedented.
It is unprecedented, and I think the shocking part is each time if whether you are watching CNN or Al Jazeera or any other media platform, you hear reports of the numbers of casualties. You do not see any individual pointer to say a direct Hamas militant, right? And I'm trying to draw the line between militants and civilians. International law protects international human rights law, international conventions protect civilians in any conflict. And there are interesting parallels here between what is happening between Ukraine and Russia and what we are witnessing between Israel and Gaza, and the voices that are emerging from Western powers. So it's like you have a scale and you can look at the two different pictures and see how two parts of humanity are treated differently, are viewed totally differently. You can easily see that in the case of Hamas and in the case of Palestine, this is collective punishment when hospitals close because there is no fuel and the international community cannot say we cannot be part of this. The people who are facing this serious conflict should have at least the basic resources so that their basic needs can be sustained. When you see the number of children, infants, who are 1 year, less than a year, 2 years, 5 years, 7, 8, who are either killed or injured from the bombings. And when you see the sophisticated technologies that is used to bomb these civilians, when you think about the fact that these civilians are forced to leave their homes, and as they are being told to move from one part to the other, all these parts they have to go to are being bombed. I mean, I am not a politician, I am just an academic and probably a deep humanitarian. I think that there should be a red line in the sense of saying we cannot, as human beings, accept this type of carnage. Every responsible citizen of the global community, every serious government, particularly those who say they respect human rights, they respect democracy, they respect the rule of law, they cannot identify with this. I mean, Israel might, and maybe rightly so, has a right to defend its sovereignty as much as the Palestinians have the right to defend their sovereignty. This conflict is more than half a century ongoing, and what we witnessed in the past 2 weeks is part of the cycles of violence that have emerged over the years. The only difference is that this time Hamas was able to inflict serious casualties, and including unacceptable human civilian casualties on Israel. So this is an opportunity to help the Israelis and the Palestinians to find peaceful coexistence in a manner that will eventually foster peace and dialogue and sustain good relations between these members of the human species.
Gideon Chitanga, thank you indeed for your insights. You are a research associate at the African Center for the Study of the US, and you are at Wits University. Always a pleasure talking to you. God bless and thank you once again.
You're welcome.
947 standing by to talk with us, well, I hope he's standing by, is the president of the student wing of the EFF and also convener of the EFF youth wing, and that, of course, is Sihle Lonzi. We'll be talking with him in literally a minute.